problems, so I could just tell you the website.
Okay, can you copy and paste it into the chat window?
Yes.
That's the easiest way to do it. Just go ahead and go to the website yourself and then copy and paste the URL into where it says enter your message in the chat window.
Yeah.
And then hit enter and it'll show up in the chat window. I can click on it and then I can save it.
Oh, nope. Okay. Chat. Paste.
There you go.
All right.
All right. So that's what I want to save as a favorite. What should I call this? Big ideas?
Yeah. It says easy math materials or easy access materials.
All right.
But easy access math is yeah.
Okay, and it doesn't look like we need a password or...
No.
Okay.
Weird.
And what now? Remind me.
So it's go up to the selection bar at the very top. Down just a tiny bit.
Choose your program. That's now I'm with you. Common Core, high school, right?
Yep.
I knew we had done this, but I couldn't remember how we got to it. Whoops. I just clicked on Algebra 2. What happened?
It's really weird. I don't know. Like it just randomly goes back to the
okay. Now we're okay. Yeah.
So my teacher gave me select problems. So I'm currently on 22, and so the first set is 16 to 26 even.
Okay. And the only thing I appear to have here. Go to.
So,
what
page do
you want me to go to?
127.
All right. And then let me minimize this a little bit. Of course. Have to maximize it. Okay. What problems are we doing?
So I'm on 22. The first set of problems is 16 to 26 even.
Okay.
And I'm on so 22.
You're done with 22 or you're working on it?
I haven't done it yet.
Okay. So we want to do 22 through 26, right?
Even. Yeah. So 22, 24, and 26.
Okay. Let me do this. Whoops. Sure I get the instructions in there. Find the discriminant of the quadratic and describe the number and type of solutions. Tell me what the discriminant is. What is it? What's its formula for the discriminant?
So it's the square root of...
Actually, just the stuff that's inside the square root.
Okay, so it's -4, or yeah, so b squared minus -4 AC.
It's b squared minus 4ac.
Yep.
Okay, that is the discriminant. And everything hinges upon whether that's positive, negative, or equal to 0. If it's negative, then we're going to be taking the square root of a negative number. We're going to have nothing but complex answers. If it's positive, we're going to be taking the square root of a positive number. We're going to have real answers, 2 of them. And if it's exactly equal to 0, then we're going to have exactly 1 real solution. So with 22, tell me what A, B, and C are.
So A is -1, B is 2, And C is 12.
Now tell me what the discriminant is.
So 2 squared minus 4 times -1 times 12.
So that's 4. What's the rest of it?
4 minus -4 times -1 is 4. So plus 4. Wait, what's 4 times 12? 4 times
48.
48. So plus 48.
Okay, so it's 4 plus 48, which is greater than 0. So what does that tell us about the number and type of solutions if the discriminant is positive?
So yeah, so the number is positive, and so
2, there's 2, means there's 2 real solutions.
yeah.
If it's less than 0, there would be 2 imaginary solutions. And if it's exactly equal to 0, then there is 1 real solution. Hold on 1 second. All right. All right, so that answers 22. Now let's look at 24. First of all, put it into proper quadratic format, and then we'll know what A, B, and C are.
Okay, so so
Proper,
0.
Proper quadratic format means 0 on one side.
Yeah. So 0 equals p squared plus, well, I'm putting it in form, so p squared plus 18p plus 81.
Okay, what's the discriminant equal to? General. What is the general? B
Oh, okay. So b squared minus 4 times, or AC.
Okay. Now, fill in everything. In other words, b squared is what?
18 squared.
Okay. Sometimes you don't have to actually figure out these numbers. You can figure it out just based on how close we are.
Right. So times 1 times 81.
Now, unfortunately, this isn't one of those cases. I don't personally know which is bigger, 18 squared or 4 times 81. So you need your calculator here.
Right.
What's 18 squared?
324.
324. And that's 320. That's 324 also. Am I correct? Yeah.
Yeah.
This discriminant is 0.
Right.
What does that mean?
That means it's only one solution.
And yeah, here's why. Here's the quadratic formula. The discriminant goes there. So if this is 0, notice that it takes out the plus or minus also. And what you end up with is minus b over 2a, which is one solution only. The reason you get 2 solutions with every other possibility is because of that plus or minus. That plus or minus always gives you 2 solutions, as long as what's the discriminant is anything other than 0.
Right.
But if it's 0, then you don't have a plus or minus. You only have one solution, and it's minus b over 2a. All right. Let's look at 26. Put that in standard format. Would you move everything to the left or to the right?
It'll be easier to move it to the left. So
Actually, hold on a second. If I move everything to the left, everything's going to have a negative coefficient. If I move everything to the right, everything's going to have a positive coefficient.
Okay.
So I would move it to the right.
Okay. So 0 equals 2x squared plus 6, or plus x plus 6.
Okay. Now notice that A, B, and C are all positive numbers. And that's just a better scenario. So now what's the discriminant equal to?
So 1 squared minus 4 times 2 times 6.
Yeah. And just a hint here that I've always found quite helpful is do that calculation first, what I've circled, not with the negative sign, without it. In other words, don't do this calculation. You can do it either way. It's just, I, for some reason personally, have found it to be a lot more accurate if I do 4AC first, subtract that number from B squared.
Okay.
Greater than or equal to or less than 0?
Is less than 0.
That's all I need. I don't need to know its number. I don't need to know that it's 47 or negative 47. I just need to know it's negative. What does that tell me about the number and type of solution? Well, actually, excuse me, the instructions do say find the discriminant. So in our case, the discriminant would be 1 minus 48 or minus 47. But typically when you're examining the discriminant for this purpose, to tell us how many solutions we have and what type they are, we don't really need the number. We just need to know if it's positive, negative, or 0. But their instructions actually say, do find the discriminant. So we found it. It was minus 47. It tells us what again?
It's 2 imaginary numbers.
Okay, what else do we got besides through 26?
So after that is 29 through 32. Or, yeah. And then just normal. So just 29 through 32.
Must be up here. Yeah. Okay. Now, one thing that's useful to know is if you have imaginary solutions, there are no x-intercepts.
Right.
If you have only one solution, in other words, if that discriminant is exactly 0, then you have precisely one intercept. In other words, this one right here, that's the one that have the discriminant is equal to 0. This is the one where the discriminant is negative.
Right.
And then the other two we'll have to figure out. Use the discriminant to match each graph. Well, I don't know that you can completely just use the discriminant. So let's look at 29. What's the discriminant on 29?
So 1 squared minus 4 times 6 times 25, or other way around, 25 times 6.
4 AC. So it's not times 6.
Oops.
With me? Did I make a mistake?
So the first one's actually 6 then. or negative 6. So negative 6 minus 4 times 1.
Oh, excuse me. I didn't even pick that up. It's 6 squared, right? And it is negative 6 squared. But when you're squaring something, we don't really care whether it was positive or negative, right? It's going to be 36 regardless. So the discriminant is 36 minus 100.
Yeah.
Okay, that's negative. Which graph is that?
C. Or, wait, no. Yeah, C.
Yeah, there's only one graph that shows a negative discriminant, and that's C. Let's look at 30. What's the discriminant on 30?
So that is negative 20 squared.
400.
Oh, yeah, wait. Yeah. Minus 4 times 2 times 50.
What's that equal to?
So 400. So it's 0.
Right. Which means it's which graph?
D.
Okay. Now, distinguishing the other two, I don't know that we can necessarily do that based just on the discriminants. But, in other words, I know that either 31 is A and 32 is B, or vice versa, right?
Right.
I don't think I can figure out which is which based on just the discriminants. They both have, no, one has a vertex that's a little different than the other. So, what is the formula for the x-coordinate of the vertex? Minus b over 2a.
Okay.
So for 31, tell me the x-coordinate of the vertex.
So it is negative 6 over 6.
Which is negative 1.
Right.
Now that tells us which curve it is. Is it A or B?
A?
Yeah, A has the x-coordinate as a negative number. B has the x-coordinate as a positive number.
All right.
So 31 goes with that, and 32 goes with that. Now, I don't think there's an easier way to do that. I'm a little puzzled by the directions. Use the discriminant to match. Explain your reasoning. Well, we didn't exactly use the discriminant. In other words, we figured that 31 and 32 both had two real solutions. The biggest difference between the two is the location of the vertex. In A, the vertex is a negative number, the x-coordinate, and in B, it's a positive number. And the quickest way to get that x-coordinate of the vertex that I know of is minus b over 2a, which isn't the discriminant, but notice what the quadratic is. And this is actually kind of helpful. One way to memorize the quadratic is to recognize that it is a combination of the vertex plus or minus the square root of the discriminant. That's actually the best way to memorize it. It's the two functions. It's minus b over 2a, and then plus or minus the square root of the discriminant. So if you don't know the quadratic formula, knowing minus b over 2a helps you memorize it, or vice versa. If you know the quadratic formula, but you forget what the formula for the vertex of the x-coordinate is, you can refer to the quadratic formula to get it.
Okay.
Okay? What else are we looking at?
So the next problem is 42.
Is what?
42.
42. Okay. Use the quadratic formula to write a quadratic equation that has the given solution. Am I missing something here?
I don't know.
No, I guess they want us to work backwards. Okay, let's see if we can do this. We have to do 41 through 46 or 42 through 46 evens.
So it just says 42 and then 61.
Okay,
Then,
so let's just do 42. So
yeah.
First of all, if the way to always start these problems is to write the general formula. Okay, well, the general formula is x equals minus b plus or minus b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Well, we're
Right.
looking at that, so immediately I know what a is. What's a?
11.
What's b?
Negative 15.
And now you can figure out c. Because the discriminant, which is b squared minus 4ac, we can tell is equal to minus 215, right?
Right.
So if I plug everything in, minus 15 squared is 225, minus 4 times 11 times c equals minus 215. So we get, here, let me write over here on the left, minus 44c equals minus 440. So c equals 10.
Yep.
Once you get a, b, and c, what's the equation?
So that is
Quadratic equation, yeah.
so 11x squared plus minus 15x plus 10 equals 0.
Yeah, or even equals y.
Yeah.
In other words, that you could figure out that that was the parabola that they're talking about, merely by their solutions. In other words, when they give you the solutions in this format, it allows you to immediately figure out a and b. Once you figure out a and b, you can figure out c based on that. And then once you have a, b, and c, you know the equation. All right, what's the next one?
61.
Okay. The formula for modeling projectile motion is height based on time, height as a function of time is equal
Right.
to minus 16 t squared plus, and the coefficient of the t is the initial velocity, 90. So it's 90t plus the height that it took off from. 7. Now, does that function make sense in our case? If I make t equals 0, then it should give us the initial height, right?
Yeah.
And it does. Gives us 7. But just always know that's always minus 16 based on the gravity. And that's always the initial vertical velocity. Well, in these kind of problems, it's always going to be vertical. It's not always vertical. Sometimes it can be at an angle. You have to find the vertical component of it. But these are basically relatively easy. Now, another player catches the ball when it's 3 feet above the ground. So how do I solve that? How long is the ball in the air? What's the height when the player catches it?
3 feet.
That's what that is. In other words, if they said, when does it hit the ground? I would make the height 0. But because a player catches it at 3 feet, then we merely have to solve this equation. And that is a standard quadratic that I'll bet solves pretty easily. I'm going to take everything over to the left. 16t squared minus 90t minus 4 equals 0. Think for a minute. Let's make this easier by dividing by 2. So we have 8t squared minus 45t minus 2 equals 0. And we can solve for t by 2 methods, either factoring it or using the quadratic formula. And I can see that factoring is not going to work. There's no way 2 times 8 gets you up to 45. So we've got to use the quadratic formula to solve this for t.
Right.
Now I still simplified it, which is useful because it makes for lower numbers. Okay, so here, let me do this. Make some writing space. I don't need that anymore because is all we're doing. In other words, is all I did was divide both sides by 2. Now, what is t equal to? Remember, it's minus b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. What is that?
Okay. So, 45 plus or minus square root of negative 45 squared,
which is
minus
45 squared.
Oh.
In other words, remember, when you're squaring a number, you can ignore the sign of it because negative 45 squared is the same as positive 45 squared. So as long as I know I'm squaring it, I don't worry about the sign.
Okay. So yeah, 45 squared minus 4 times 8 times negative 2.
Now, let's talk about that for a second. Remember what I said. I always tell everybody to do that first. And the reason is that we're looking at 2 negative signs here. Really, really easy to make a mistake. So if you do the 4 times the 8 times the negative 2 and then subtract that number from 45 squared, you'll have the answer. Okay, and of course this is all over 16. So let's see, I guess you need an answer, don't you? So here's what we got. 45 plus or minus, what's 45 squared?
2025.
And then it's going to be plus 64, right? You see why?
Yes.
Because it's going to be minus a minus 64, which is the same as plus 64, all over 16. Now, I don't know what kind of number that is, but that's your answer. But now hold on. Let's go ahead and get a number on that, because we get two answers.
Right.
So what are they?
So
I'll bet this is a whole number. The square root of 2089. What's the square root of 2089?
Oh, hold on. 45.7.
Okay. What's our answer to this question? How long is the ball in the air?
So 45.7 seconds.
Well, notice there's two answers. Which one do we use?
45. So hold on.
One of them gives you a positive number, the other gives you a negative number. Notice that if I do 45 minus 45.7, I get a negative number. Can you have negative times?
No.
So we're going to wipe that one out and just do the positive answer, which is 5.7 divided by 16, which is what?
5.66.
5.66 seconds. That's how long the ball is in the air. A very typical, that's actually a fairly complicated question because they have somebody catching it at 3 feet. Typically the question is when does it hit the ground?
Okay.
And that's where you have to set the height equal to 0 because the ground is at 0 height.
Right.
All right.
So the next problem is 63.
63?
Yeah.
Okay. Give me the general equation.
So
Its height as a function of t, time. And that's what it always is on projectile motion. What was it again?
So h of t equals negative 16 t squared plus 90t, I think, right?
Not 90. It's whatever the initial speed is.
Oh, okay, so
velocity of 55 feet per second.
So 55 t.
And what was the height?
10.
Now, there's only one problem. What we have written here would be a velocity where she hits it up at 55 feet per second. She's hitting it down at 55 feet per second. So this isn't a plus sign, it's a minus sign.
Okay, so minus.
Velocity has a sign to it. Velocity has both direction and magnitude. And in this case, down is negative. Whenever you have parabolic motion, down is negative, up is positive. Gravity is always acting down, and that's why it has a negative 16, because gravity is always attracting it to the center of the earth.
Right.
And her velocity that she spiked the ball is going to make it go down faster. not slower. So if I were to leave that being a plus sign, it would mean that she would have hit the ball up and then it comes back down. So if she's striking it straight down, then it's a negative 55 feet per second.
Right. Okay.
Now, how do I solve the problem of how long do we have to react before it hits the ground?
So,
What do I need to plug in for what?
I think 0 for the height.
Exactly. In other words, that's when it'll hit the ground, is when the height is 0. So just make that 0 and solve that quadratic. Now, do we need to go through the solution? We've done like 5 of them. I would think we can be spared of that. In other words, you know how to solve that, right?
Yes. I think.
Well, it's t equals minus b plus
Oh,
minus.
yeah.
In other words, it's the quadratic formula. Unless it factors, there's always a bit of a fine line between trying to figure out if something factors as opposed to going straight into the quadratic. Notice I could spend quite a bit of time trying to figure out if that factors. I got a lot of factors of 16. I got a couple factors of 10. So trying to come up with a number that might factor it perfectly could take me 5 or 10 minutes. Whereas if I go immediately into the quadratic formula, well, I know I've got a limited amount of work to do. It's 55 squared minus 4 times minus 16 times 10, all over negative 32. So, and this negative b means positive 55. So there's your answer, and again we're going to get 2 answers. One's going to be negative, one's going to be positive. Well, times don't go negative.
Right.
When you're solving for times, always throw out your negative. It's kind of like solving a triangle and getting a negative dimension. You throw out negative dimensions. There's no such thing. And there's no negative times either.
All right. So,
whatever that number is, that's our answer. And notice that our answer in this case is actually going to come from that part of it. Because it's the plus is going to give us a positive numerator and a negative denominator will give me a negative time. But the minus will give me a negative numerator, and I already have a negative denominator, and so that will give me my positive time.
okay.
Best way to do it is just to calculate both of them and then throw out the negative one. But it is unique, not unique, but it's different than the previous problem where we threw out the negative sign. This time we're going to throw out the positive sign because we need the negative sign to make the whole thing positive.
Okay.
All right. You need to come up with a number for that, or can we go on?
I want to figure out the number. So I'm already at t equals 55 plus the square root of 3025 plus 640 over negative 32.
What's the discriminant value?
So, so 3025 plus 640.
What's that? I don't have my calculator here. I'm waiting for you to do calculations. So square root of what?
It's 3,665.
Okay, now take the square root of that.
60.54.
Now, can you see why we need the negative side of that, not the positive?
Right.
In other words, the negative side is going to give me in the numerator minus 5.54 divided by minus 36. Well, that's a positive number, and that's what I'm looking for, is a positive time. And we would expect it to be less than 1 second, right?
Right.
I mean, she's spiking it at 55 feet per second. It's not going to take very many seconds to hit the floor. And that's about a fifth of a second or a sixth of a second. So that answer makes a lot of sense also. You need to get this on a calculator. Go ahead and come up with a final number. But it shows you how you use the plus and the minus. In other words, you always do both, but then you're going to get a negative answer and a positive answer. We want to throw out the negative answer.
Right. So the answer is 0.17.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense as to how long it would take to hit the ground. In other words, we wouldn't want to come up with an answer that was like 2 seconds. Because at 55 feet per second, in 2 seconds it will go down at 110 feet. And it only has to travel 10 feet. So we know it's going to be a part of a second.
Right.
All right.
So one more problem, and that is 67.
Okay. Already on this page. Give me the standard equation again.
So h of t equals negative 16, 16 squared, t squared, negative 88 t plus 100.
That's its initial height, is 100 feet. That
Right.
third number is always the initial height. The middle coefficient is always the initial velocity. And in this case, they tell us that it's minus 88. They don't make us figure it out. Not quite sure why. In 62, we had to figure it out. Well, and in 63, we had to figure out that it was a minus velocity of 55 feet per second. Well,
Right.
Here they put the minus sign in, just, I suppose, to be helpful. I'm not really sure why they changed it. Okay. How much time does the fish have to swim away?
So,
Which is the time that it takes the gannet to hit the water. What's its height when it hits the water?
0.
Now you have to solve that quadratic. That's how much time the fish has to swim away. You with me?
Yep.
Is this the last problem we're going to do, or is there more?
Yeah. Yeah, this is it.
Well, we might as well do the whole thing then. Okay, so let's figure out what t is. Fill it all in for me.
Yep. So t equals 88 plus or minus the square root of 88 squared minus 4 times negative 16 times 100.
Yeah, and you can kind of see why it's useful to just do those three first, 4AC. It's all going to be over minus 32 again. Okay, figure out the discriminant.
So,
We're just doing the discriminant first, and then
right.
the square root of that number.
So negative 4 times negative 16.
No, don't do negative 4. I mean,
Oh, right.
you could, but I think it's a mistake. I think you always want to do 4AC first, and then subtract that from 88 squared. In other words, don't make it a negative 4. That dash in front of the 4, treat it as subtraction, not as a negative sign. The dash in front of the 16 is a negative sign.
Okay. So that's 4, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So 14,144 is the discriminant.
Okay. And take the square root of that.
Uh, 118.93.
Okay, so there are our two answers. Now tell me what time or how long it takes that fish or that bird to hit the water.
So 118.93 seconds.
No, this gives me two solutions. Figure out what both of them are and choose the positive.
Oh, right. So 8 plus.
You don't actually have to do all that work. You can notice that the positive sign is not the one we want. That's going to give us a negative answer.
Okay.
Let's just do the negative sign. Let's cover up the positive sign and do just the negative sign. What do you get? You get minus 30.93 divided by minus 32. There's your answer.
All right. So then divide that.
Mm-hmm.
So that is 0.97
seconds.
Right.
So not a little bit under a second for that fish to swim away. Wonder fish don't have large lifespans. They don't have a lot of time to get out of the way, do they?
No.
Part B. Another bird spots the same fish and it is only 84 feet above the water and has an initial vertical velocity of minus 70. Which bird gets to the fish first? Well, got to do the exact same equation, only using the numbers for the second bird. So, in other words, the difference is the initial speed and the height. So how does it change my equation? That's for bird number 1. About the height for bird number 2. Or what's its equation? Minus 16t squared. What's the rest of it?
So minus 70 plus what was it?
T.
T plus 84.
Okay. Now, that will tell you how many seconds it's going to take that second bird to hit the water. If it's quicker than 0.9 seconds, it wins. If it's slower than 0.9 seconds, it loses. Well, let's figure out what it is. Fill it in.
So t equals 70 plus or minus square root of 70 squared minus 4, oh yeah, minus 4 times 16 times 84.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
figure out the discriminant.
So, one second.
In fact, figure out the square root of the discriminant. Save us some time. But you kind of have to do these in steps. You almost have to figure out 4ac first, subtract that from b squared, and then take that number and take the square root of it. So you kind of work in reverse here. You don't necessarily want to do that whole step in your calculator all at one step.
Okay, so that is so the 5,376 is the negative.
I'll take the square root of that number.
Oh wait, hold on. I forgot to do the 70 squared. So.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you're right. That's 4,900 plus whatever that other number was.
Yeah. So 0 plus 5,376 is 10,276.
The square root of
it. One sec. 10 to 76. Oh wait, hold on. Square root of 10 to 76. So 101.37.
Okay, now tell me what the answer is for how long it takes that bird to hit the water. It's going to be a contest.
So, 171.37 divided by 32. Oh. Wait, 101.37 minus 70. Okay, so, wait, hold on, what? So it is 70 minus 101.37, right?
This is negative 31.37.
Okay.
Negative 31.37 divided by negative 32. What's that? Well, first of all, let me back up. I want to make sure you understand how I got that, because you seem to have some questions about it.
So it was...
I'm only doing this part here. I know the plus solution is going to give me a negative number. Not interested in negative answers. Only interested in positive answers. So I've got to use the negative sign to get a positive answer. What's that fraction equal? Let me guess, 0.98 something.
Yeah, 0.98.
Which bird gets the fish?
The first bird.
Yeah, the bird that's at a higher height. In other words, the first bird is at 100 feet. The second bird's only at 84 feet. But the first bird has greater velocity going down than the second bird did. So it gets there a fraction of a second sooner.
Yep. All right.
And there
that's it.
That's it. Okay.
Cool.
I will talk to you next week.
Yep.
All right. Sounds good.
Bye.
Bye-bye.